So if you have a fire and it takes us 4 months to settle it, to max out, and then you take 6 months to rebuild, you didn't lose anything. You were still collecting rents.
Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is the podcast where we help you challenge your mindset and discover where you are. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show, where we bring you great content related to investing in real estate and how to protect it, and great guests. And today we have a repeat, so to speak. Andy is back. Hey, Andy.
What's going on, Alex? Thank you again for having me. Second time.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, we need recovery, right? Like recovery is important for everybody all the time. So before we dive in, tell the audience a little bit who you are, where you're coming from, and how did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, my name is Andy Gurczak. I'm the CEO founder of All City Adjusting. In business almost 15 years, handling first property claims for primary management companies, investors, landlords. From A to Z, we handled the entire claim process. And with my background was construction, sales, and then fell into this, learned the insurance kind of language and interpreting language and all the good stuff. And we've built the company now to handling claims in over 40 states. Large our specialty, and again, I've named the client base that we handle. And yeah, so I'm an investor myself. We own a commercial building. We just did a 1031 last year. So not just speaking always as a public adjuster, as a representative of insureds, but also as an investor himself, and feel so I can relate to the listeners of your show.
Yeah, that's very cool, and thank you for coming back to the show. So can you describe what kind of protection? I always call it protection, meaning like, what kind of
Correct.
Insurance are you basically supporting? And you correct my language if I'm saying it wrong, but basically my understanding of adjusting is always, okay, somebody has insurance on, let's say, a property, something happens, and now the issue is, how do I get the maximum, for example, to repair, to fix it, or whatever? Can you
100%.
maybe describe that a little bit?
Yeah. So the easiest way to look at it is the insurance company is going to have their own adjuster, their own contractors, their restoration guys, and their whole team, right? Everyone's working for their insurance company. Insurance company's paying them, the engineers, everyone else, and so forth. So obviously they're going to look in the interest of the insurance company, which is very fair. That's their business. They're trying to make an income, right? Like Allstate, like anyone that's travelers companies, especially that have shares, right? They're publicly traded companies, even the privately owned. They're trying to make a profit. If there's a reason, if they can underpay claims and they're not doing that on purpose, there's a formula to it. Then obviously if the claims get accepted and Alex accepts the claim, accepts his first check, they're super happy, right? They just saved, a huge amount of paying Alex a lot more that he's owed to, but he was fair and he took the amount, right? We're there representing that client, making sure they get every penny from every coverage they have, right? And then that way we can maximize their claim. And now they can put their property back together, have more than enough money. They're paying our fee, they pay the claim, and they're still having money left over, right? And there's nothing illegal, there's nothing wrong with that. They're owed that money. But if they don't ask for it, because again, insureds never remember the burden of proof is on you, right? It's on the insured. It's not the insurance company to tell you how much they owe you. It's on you to tell them how much you owe them.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you for describing that. So what I'm familiar with for our investments, and it's true pretty much since, as you know, we are in the residential part up to 5 doors maximum. So single family homes is the vast majority. Here and there we have a duplex, triplex, fourplex, stuff like that. And what I see there is typically people having owner's insurance. And then in certain cases, with our property managers, we also encourage the tenants to have renter's insurance. So are those the two main ones that you would say apply? Or are there any others that we should be aware of?
Oh, yeah, the tenant has to have his own insurance. That business. If you're a business owner, you have your insurance. But yeah, you definitely any property claim, first person property claim, we can handle. Right, that's our thing. Now the way where we don't or can't help someone is either you don't have insurance, or the second is if it's a liability insurance. So for example, if you were trying to go after your neighbor's insurance, right, that's when we can't represent you. But anything first party, that's when we would step in.
Okay, and then the next thing for our audience that is obviously, and for me, admittedly, there is this kind of balancing act, right? Because from an investment perspective, and you said you're an investor yourself, we are obviously looking to keep expenses reasonable. I mean, not to shortchange, but if I can, for example, get same quality property management for 8% of the rent or 10% of the rent, I would initially be inclined to go with a lower charge. Same thing, if I can save a lot of money by having a larger deductible, I would probably do this because we're obviously not planning to constantly have a claim. So what would you say, especially in the insurance part, where is that balance? How would you, based on experience, say is it reasonable to go for maximum deductible and eating that if necessary, which also in my opinion means that you really only ever use it when there is a pretty substantial claim, right?
Yeah, so when looking at a claim or working with a public adjuster, you definitely, that's going to weigh on you, because we're going to say, hey, our fee, like public adjuster fees, start at 10%. Now companies charge a lot more. Our standard is usually 10%. Now, if we were to come on middle of the claim, it might be different on an additional we would get, but just say 10% for easy sake. That's usually our standard fee. So someone's going to always look at it, Alex, if you called us and we're discussing your claim, Axel, sorry, and you were discussing your claim, you would say, well, if I have to pay you, if I get 100,000, I owe you 10,000, right? Because a lot of people start thinking, well, that makes no sense. Why would I pay you? The insurance is going to pay me. Our average return for our clients is 385%. That's average. So what's 10%? We could be charging a lot, for a 10% investment, you get a 385, return on your claim.
Right. And so I guess if we turn this into an example, if I have, for example, I have flood insurance, earthquake insurance, hurricane insurance, whatever else I can have, and normal homeowners insurance. And so some natural disaster happens. And let's say I have a $5,000 deductible and $100,000 what I think is needed to fix the damage. Then it would still be true that I pay $5,000 for the deductible, pay $10,000 to you, but then you would get the remaining $85,000 and not anything less than that. Is that about right?
That's about right. When we look at claims, Axel, if you call us, right, or you're one of our like clients that we serve all the time, their properties, we look at every claim, right? So if you said, hey, I just had a natural disaster, we just had a fire, California, the whole house is burnt to the ground, my limit's 500, and we look at the photos, well, your damage, they're just going to max out the coverage for you. There's no need to hire us. Why would I charge you a fee, right? There's no value I can bring because you were just exactly. So that's how we look at it, right? We only want to get involved if we can bring value to it, Axel. So that's the only way we'll get involved, right? But you want to get a PA involved right from the beginning, because a legit PA like us, like real, we're going to tell you exactly, hey, I'm looking at a claim, you only have $500,000 of coverage, but you have $1 million loss. You don't need our help. They're just going to come out and write a check, and it's a total loss. Now, let's say they don't. Well, then we can talk and we can, we'll help you. But if you have $1.5 million worth of coverage and you had a fire, right, we will look at it. Okay, well, now let's go after that $1.5 million, because it's going to be hard. We're really going to have to write a full, prepare everything to get to your limits or get close to it to get every penny, because you're actually insured the right way. So there's instances where you don't need us. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Although I would say for anybody listening who is a member in our tribe or a client or even considering, my personal advice would be, don't ever let a property be underinsured like that, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's just not smart. And I mean, if you have financing on it, it's also not very likely that you get away with it, because the lender is not going to let you, because they get the notification of the renewal of the insurance every year.
Correct.
So, that I hear you on that case. My point is more, I've always assumed, and maybe I'm wrong about that if you had a catastrophic thing, it burned down, it got flooded and whatever, that even though the adjusters might say what the amount of repair would be, I would not want to go with anybody other than the people that actually would have to do the work. Right? Isn't that, I mean, if
correct.
The question is, if you go extreme, like you said, the place burned down, well, I would want to get a contractor, say, rebuild me my house. How much is it? Not what does an adjuster estimate. That doesn't really care. I don't care what they think. It's more like, what does it really cost, assuming it is fully insured. The property itself, I mean, the tenants need to live somewhere else, and you have to probably get like transportation and hotel and all this other stuff, right?
Well, that's not on you. You are the building owner. You are, the tenant that's what they have rental insurance for. And if they don't have it, I mean, correct. If you're a landlord, you want to help them out, but technically you're not responsible for, the tenants moving out or housing him in somewhere else. That's on their responsibility. You're going to be claiming loss of rents, right? Like, Axel, so why it works with us, especially representing landlords and investors and management companies and investors. What happens is you have loss of income. So if you have a fire and it takes us 4 months to settle it, to max out, and then you take 6 months to rebuild, you didn't lose anything. You were still collecting rents, even though you had no tenant in there.
So yeah, you better. I mean, that's why I want to work with Andy.
Correct. So that's why it's, well, now let's just say, like, you have a fire, you're a family, there's 5 kids, and it's like they have 5 weeks left of school. Well, you're just in a hurry to get back in the house. You want that restoration company or that come in because you don't care what happens. You just want someone to come in, fix it, and you want to be back in your house, right?
Right.
So we sometimes have to tell people, like, it's the you have to wait. It's a slow game. The quicker you are, the worse position you'll be in.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you. Hey, let's take a quick break for a message from our sponsors. If you're serious about growing your wealth, the best opportunities aren't always the most obvious. That's why we've partnered with Bob Bernodas of Franchise with Bob. He specializes in helping investors like you leverage franchising an overlooked but highly profitable way to create semi-passive income. And for a limited time, Bob is giving our listeners access to his course on franchise investing for free. Inside, you'll learn how to evaluate franchises, minimize risk, and maximize your returns. This course is normally sold for $499, so don't miss out and claim your free course now at edu.franchisewithbob.com/ideal.
This is a fire. This is in Ohio. Is a 4-unit building. So this is an estimate we put together, right? The estimate's how we put them together, and you could kind of see everything's written out, but how detailed our estimate gets. I mean, room by room, wall by wall, item by item, what needs to be done. I mean, this is a 4-unit building, 1,000 square foot a unit, so 4,000 square feet, and this is how extensive our estimate gets. Do you think your contractor is going to put an estimate like this? There's no way.
Probably not. No, probably not.
I was a contractor too, Axel. But when you asked me to do an estimate, I would just tell you what I'm doing, summarize it, and then give you a total price. What happens is if you turn that into your insurance company, now they're going to say, hey, Axel, make sure your contractor breaks down his estimate. No contractor is going to be breaking down line item by line item. That's not what we're getting paid for as a contractor.
Yeah. That's definitely true. And I mean, the other thing is obviously there are, under normal circumstances, at least what I've seen, if you get a contractor even to renovate, right, they typically wouldn't be the ones that pick out the appliances. They wouldn't be the ones who pick out the furniture that needs to be replaced, or the curtains, or the blinds, or, there are certain things that they just don't consider to be part of the building, but it's more like furnishings and decorations and what have you. So yeah, I think you're doing a great job going to that level of detail. Yeah.
So yeah, this is every estimate, and this is just, this is a smaller building. It's not a big, this is a 4-unit, but this is how detailed it gets. And when you get contractor estimates, those are your estimates, Axel. We tell our clients, whatever invoices you get, your estimates you get, you work with contractors, you talk to them what you want to do. Let us handle it. Let us negotiate and settle it. And then we'll tell you how much you're getting, right? And now you could see, compared to what your contractor, 99% of the time, we're way higher than any contractor. There's instances, small instances, let's say in our estimate, maybe the windows, you had these custom built windows, right? And our estimate doesn't have that program, doesn't have that line item. So maybe we're a little bit less. That's when we would plug in your contractor's bid into our estimate, but then we still add on 10 and 10, 10% overhead, 10% profit. So there's 20% getting added to that bid already. If that
that
makes
makes
sense.
sense. And I mean, obviously, the audience is going to ask, okay, do we get what Andy gets for us, or do we get the only actual cost that is proven by the invoice?
So yeah, that's a good question. No, you get the full amount, the full replacement. Obviously, they're going to pay you the actual cash value, and then the replacement, the depreciation is paid when the repairs are done, right? And if you do repairs differently, you do less repairs or something, we still send an invoice. Like we still make sure that our clients get that depreciation released.
Very good. Okay. So
like we're there till the end, right? We don't just leave you once we get it settled. We don't just say, "See you, Axel. We'll never talk to you again." No, we're partnership till the end, till you have your next claim. If you never have one, great. We'll still like you're still on our radar. So when you're done with the project, or let's say you're in the middle of the project, you would call me and say, "Hey, the contractor is saying, Andy, that they took down the walls and there's all this stuff behind the walls." Great. We'll send our team out to photograph everything, do our supplement. We'll work a supplement into the insurance company. You keep doing your work, right? So we're there till the end.
Okay, very good. Now, we talked before we started recording that you work a lot with property management companies and like to work with them. As an investor, I can see obviously something terrible or not, well, substantial, let's say, has happened or is happening to the property. The property management company would probably be, if they have already a standing relationship with you, at least I would hope that they would say, okay, we should involve Andy here on behalf of the investor. But if somebody is self-managing, how would they actually know about you, or what would we basically, as anybody listening to us who is not going through property management, what would be the best way for them to basically know what to do? And from what I hear, I think you're saying as soon as something happens that looks like an insurance claim, get in touch, right?
Yeah. So Axel, let's say you're managing your own property. You have a water break. So right, you call one of our team members, whether it's me, anyone on the team, answer. Just for example, I'll answer. I'll say, "Great, Axel. Do you have any pictures, like kind of what's going on?" You send me the policy. You send me a couple of photos. I'll say, "Hey, your limit on this is only 5,000. This is a lot more than 5. There's no need for us to get involved. You'll send these pictures to the insurance. They'll just pay you a full check. Not even they'll when it's over limits, they waive your deductible, so you'll get the full 5. You don't need us, right? But again, if it was another instance, you had a pipe break and your limit's 100, I'd say, heck yeah, like make sure the contractor dries this out, removes this. We'll handle the claim. This is definitely a claim you want to get us involved in, and we want to help.
Right? Okay, very good. Now, the other thing, and you mentioned, owner's insurance and renter's insurance. What I've seen now, sadly, for one of my own properties, but also from a couple of our clients who have multiple properties, is that they have cases where the property management rented the property to tenants. Tenants have whatever issue, lose their job or whatever it may be. And then they cause substantial damage and, or leave all kinds of shit, sorry for my French, in the house and so forth. So, like I have had a case with one extreme case of one of our clients where property management said, well, to the best of the estimates that we can get, it's like 15 grand to fix. Now, is there anything that can be done with insurance in that kind of situation?
That's a great question. We get those. Actually, I'd like to say at least once a week, we get a landlord with that kind of request. They'll send us pictures and say, "Hey, they trashed my property." Trashing your property is not vandalism. If they actually went in and vandalized, like ripped off cables and destroyed the property, and you have a police report, that's a vandalism claim. We can definitely handle that. Now, if the tenant leaves and the walls are scratched up and the carpets, are dirty and stuff, well, that's just, they were your tenants. That's what happens. That's a tenant. So you have to make sure you word it right, and it's got to be actual vandalism. So like we look at those all the time, and we're able to say, okay, yeah, this definitely would classify vandalism, and we can see this insurance will definitely pay for this and see this as vandalism. In other instances, we're like, yeah, this is a normal tenant that just lived like a dirty tenant and just didn't care about your property. You can't.
Okay, so there is Now, would you say, and just because I think this would be a great service, and I know that, if you get too many of those, it's not really worth your time or interested in your time. But is it fair to say, if in doubt, get in touch and you take a look and you say very quickly yes or no?
That's what we tell everyone, right? It's the one thing that happens when people call us when it's too late. People just don't know about us. I do these podcasts because it's to educate, right? To educate listeners, to educate investors and landlords and management companies, and even just regular homeowners, because that's all we can do is educate. And then hopefully when something does happen, you make that call right away, because it doesn't hurt to make a call. We don't charge for a call. We don't charge to look at your policies before you have a claim. We do that for free. We look at claims for free. We're trying to make sure that you have a legitimate claim, that it's worth filing, and if we do take on this claim and you bring us on, that we're going to bring you maximum value.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't
That's
hurt.
that's what everybody wants. I'm sure people love working with you, especially when that's the outcome, so.
And the outcomes are the outcomes we have, the claims we take on, the outcomes are great. Now there's instances, yes, where the insurance company just doesn't want to pay, or something happens, once in a while, that it has to go to legal or an attorney. That happens. That's normal. That we can't control. But yeah, the outcomes, when I can share my screen again, that's actually on this thing where, the insured got 13 buildings. They got 26,000 to repair shingles on their entire building. That settled last month for 956,000. Can you imagine going from 26,000 to?
That's a great point. And one other thing I wanted to ask, because obviously my own role as kind of like the founder of Idea Wealth Grow and providing the mentoring and support services, but it's not just me, it's also for our clients. They oftentimes start out with their first property, and then we get another one maybe at the end of the first year, and then another one the next year, and so forth. And the goal is to build the portfolio to get to this time freedom point that we're all working towards. But what I've seen, and it's my own reality, is ultimately I basically got all my investment properties with the same insurance company. And what I'm wondering is there actually a little bit more likelihood that they would have a favorable view on stuff when they know that there are, like in my case, 9 other properties, or do they literally look at each one individually?
We've noticed, and in our 15 years, that all you are is a policy number. Because people will call us and say, hey, I had a fire, I had a claim, I've been with this insurance for 25 years. They don't care. There's no favor. Even with USAA, we've handled claims for some higher up, people in the Army or whatever, in any kind of service. And you think just because, how you see their commercials portrayed, and because these guys serve the country, there would be some kind of hey, heck no. They are just.
I actually I have my San Diego house with them for 29 years already. So because I was in the Air Force and I was relatively in a good rank
and we had someone that served 12 years on in the Navy, spent 10 on the boat, didn't see his family, and we had a claim, and I mean they nickeled, and I mean it was such a hard fight, and I kept thinking this guy did so much and spent so much time away for this country. He was just a member. There was no, we ended up sending in an email to the higher ups of USAA, showing their commercials and how we help our, because this is not what you're doing. This is, so I don't think so. It depends. Now there's some smaller carriers, Axel, that I do think that they do look at that. But the bigger guys have gone away. Everyone's just a policy number.
Okay, yeah, I think that's important to know. And I mean, I feel lucky that I never had a claim with them, right? But I agree with you. It's a little bit sad to hear that, because I would have expected that they are different. On the other hand, I have to say, at least, so far for most of the policies that we have with them, they're still almost not beatable if you have military background as far as the
100, I bet. Correct.
So,
and that's how it is with people. Why do people still insure with Allstate State Farm if they know that, when it comes to, people know that how it is handling claims with Allstate and State Farm, because they have the lowest premiums.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I mean, as an investor, you're an investor yourself. You also
correct. You look at that stuff.
Yes. Anything that you pay extra for no real benefit is cutting into your cash flow. So
I when I insure my buildings, I know, okay, I could get State Farm in this building, but if something happens, I'm going to work this claim on my own. I'll be fine. I know exactly how State Farm works. I know how they want stuff presented. Great. But when people ask me what insurance company, I'm like, well, don't get State Farm because you don't handle their claims, because I know how it's going to be. But unless you want to go with this better carrier, but they're going to charge you a much higher premium. So, when you're an investor, definitely you look into all that. But we do have a large investor that they send us every time they buy a property, they send us like 3 insurance they're getting quotes from. And we'll always look at it and kind of advise, this is the better carrier, this coverage, here's so that way they can still fit in their budget that they calculated for their investors, because they're a syndicate. So they have a bunch of people they're bringing in. Obviously,
Right.
they have numbers they want to hit. So we want to make sure that, they still have the right coverage. They have the good insurance. Their premium is still, affordable and fits into their budget. So we do that for free.
Yeah, that's very good. And I guess you just explained to me what it means to say you get what you paid for, right?
Yes. 100%. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, Andy,
Yeah.
I think you made a wonderful case again, like you did last time. So if people say, well, I really feel like I am missing out by not having Andy on my side, what do they do? How do they get in touch?
Yeah, they can call me directly, and I will leave them with my cell phone number for your listeners, like I did last time. 708-655-4186. That's my direct line. If they ever want to call or have questions, they can look me up online. They can look up All City Adjusting, allcityadjusting.com. They'll find tons of videos. There's a ton of content we've put out.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And we're going to obviously put the number and everything that people need and the website and so forth in the show notes so that they can easily do that. And I hope many of our listeners will get in touch, because I really think it's important. And I definitely want more, like we said before we record, I want a closer relationship going forward. So with all that being said, as you know, at the end of the show, I always ask 1 or 2 extra questions. I don't know if I asked it last time or not, but I want to ask today, if you could meet anybody dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Dead or alive? Oh my God. Vince Lombardi. I'm a huge Packers fan, and Vince Lombardi is big. I've read a lot of his books and stories about him. So that would be one. There's a lot, but Vince Lombardi I would put on my list.
Okay, understood. Yeah, I like a lot of what I've seen, like these quotes that he has.
Most of the quotes in America are Vince Lombardi's quotes. So
yeah, Yogi Berra or stuff like that, right?
Yeah. The guy's a champion. So.
Yeah, I'm a leadership aficionado. I studied that and so forth, and I still find that a very, very interesting topic. How do you inspire and have a vision that people are willing to follow? And those quotes fit very well to that. It's not just sports; it's almost universal. So I'm with you on that. All right, Andy, thank you so much for being on the show for a second time. It was a great pleasure, and I'm looking forward to have a closer relationship going forward. And anybody in the audience, if you don't catch Andy on the phone number, you can always come to me and I make the connection, and then we rock and roll.
Excellent. Right. Thank you so much for the second time for this invite, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to maybe doing a third time next year.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.